Anime. So yeah, I went out today and I saw. I just want to get I'm gonna do this first. So yeah. So today was the release date of Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim, an anime movie by. Oh gosh, let me let me make sure I'm not mispronouncing this name. By Kenji Kamiyama. Sorry, I said I didn't want to screw it up, but I already screwed it up. Kenji Kamiyama is the director of this. He's been a prolific animator in the anime industry. He's worked for Ghibli. He's worked for other studios. I think Solata was the name of the animation studio that did this one primarily. But yeah, it's kind of flown under the radar. WB's basically done very little marketing for this. Kind of being sent to die. Kind of unfortunate. Yeah, he worked on Ghost in the Shell, Get Sack, a standalone complex. So yeah, it's a pretty cool movie that's all about Rohan. Set 183 years before The Hobbit. So that puts it like a good 220, 30 years before Lord of the Rings or so. So yeah, you're not really going to be seeing any familiar characters. You're going to see many familiar places in the movie, though. So the thing is obviously I'm a big animation fan, and I'm a recovering weeb, but I'm familiar with anime enough that I like it. This obviously is like right up my alley, generally speaking. So the first thing that struck me was how nice it was to be sitting in a theater in December and seeing Lord of the Rings and hearing the music. I think Stephen Gallagher is the music composer for this, but there's a lot of also, and he is credited a lot of not remix, but like reused or repurposed themes from Howard Shore from the original trilogy is in here. So that was just fantastic. It was just great to be in the theater in December watching a Lord of the Rings film, getting whisked back away to this fantasy. And I think right off the bat, I think this is a better film than the Hobbit films. I know that may not be saying much, and the Hobbit's my favorite book. And I think there is a good film somewhere waiting to be edited within those Hobbit movies. Maybe two good films, maybe. But so we basically, we get a new Lord of the Rings movie that's in universe. It's in the film universe. Like, it's not a reinterpretation. It's using the same music. It's using the same Alan Lee, John Howe art as a base. They're also credited as concept designers on the film. So this is absolutely a Lord of the Rings universe, film universe film. And that was just really nice. It was just really nice to be back here. And so it was a really good first impression. Now, I knew right away. I mean, I think the film is generally gorgeous, generally speaking. And I have no problem with anime and the way anime is animated. But I think this film is going to be very off-putting and polarizing to critics, specifically because it's an anime film and it's animated like an anime film. And we already saw it happen with some people when they were watching the Spider-Verse films, and there were hills some of these reviewers died on, saying that they swore up and down the projector was busted for their film, and when they were told it wasn't and shown it wasn't, they were like, well, this is terrible. How dare you animate a film like this? And it's like, okay, if you're okay with films not looking like Snow White or Toy Story, if you're like me, I think you'll be fine. I actually had no problem. That being said, there are moments where this is not a Studio Ghibli animated film. This is not up to that level. There are moments in the film. There's a moment early on in the film where a character is making a big speech, or he's just talking to a broad audience, and I swear the animation was just like kind of looping. It looped like 3 times of this guy just standing and talking, sort of moving his arms a little bit. It was really weird. And then there's moments where you'll notice like characters at a distance are like way less detailed than they should be. On a big screen, oh boy, is this noticeable. You know, so sometimes you'll get these moments where like a character is like, you know, the minimalist amount of details possible, and they're not far enough away to be that minimal detail. Film was made in with the English dub in mind, so it is lip synced to English. You don't have to worry about this being like a film where, that's the other thing too, is you'll notice with the script and the dialogue, it's not paced like an anime, and it's not paced like a translated anime. This is not a film that was like translated into another language. It's like they recorded the English lines first and then they animated to that. So yeah, it's definitely not in that sense. It's not like an anime film where like they're sort of fitting, you know, translating a language and localizing it and making it like work in English, and then also at the same time trying to match lips, you know, lip syncing and timing. It doesn't have that problem, not really. So that being said, yeah, it is. I think generally though speaking, it took me like less than a minute to just be like, oh yeah, we're back, baby. And even though it is, yes, it's animated, but like, again, they do a really, really, really good job. And again, just to the strength of the original film designs, like Edoras looks like Edoras. Helm's Deep looks like Helm's Deep. You know, like things look 100% the way they're supposed to. So that's fantastic. So, you know, that all that being said, like, so how is the actual story? Well, the story, this is based off an appendices, a very brief bit of writing in appendices A from Lord of the Rings that Tolkien wrote about the kings of Rohan, and it was really more of just a sort of like there was this guy and there was this guy and there was this guy, and they just took a story where, you know, the King Helm, you know, he had two sons that were murdered in battle, and then he had a daughter who disappeared. And they're like, okay, well, there's a story there. So they write a story based on a very brief description of what's recounted or what was described in a Tolkien appendices. It's kind of what they did is actually kind of, I think, pretty good in a sense where this is sort of a story about like the madness of like, and that's something that's very Tolkien in a way, is like the things that drive men mad. And this film is about, you know, the madness of grief and war and like you know, adherence to honor and stuff like that, and you know, kind of family, a little bit family, not really, but yeah, I guess I could say like, yeah, just all that stuff in their family, grief, war, madness, all that kind of general stuff. There's some really, you know, it's pretty decent stuff here. It is kind of like fascinating to watch what starts out as basically these people are all sort of allied. Like, it's about the, you know, all the different kingdoms of Rohan, all the different areas of that area, of that part of Middle Earth. But there's definitely scheming and plotting going on, and well-intentions just go sour real quick, and then it's just this sort of like driven to madness, you know, that infighting and war causes. It's a little bit in a way, not in the same, oh, it's about people fighting for their freedom. It's not that, but it's a little bit in the way of Braveheart, or maybe Braveheart as its reality would tell you, which is how there was all kinds of infighting between the different areas of Great Britain throughout history, and all the ways they schemed and plotted and fought and all that stuff. So yeah, like it is kind of it's a nice film. Well, okay, here's the thing that what I'm getting at more with that is, the nicest thing about this movie is it's like peering into an alternate timeline or universe where animation was taken seriously in America. That's what this film is. If there's anything I want you to take away from this movie, is that it is a portal into another universe where animation was taken absolutely seriously in theatrical releases, and we were getting films that there's no jokiness, there's no animal sidekick, there's no comic relief, there is the vaguest, faintest hint of a comic relief character, but it's really not even that. It's really more just like someone you kind of just, oh, he tries his best, kind of thing. So, it's like peering into an alternate universe where people decided, hey, we're gonna make tragic epics in animated form, and make them look good. So that's what the nice thing of this, probably the biggest takeaway from that is, and that's probably why I would say, hey, you should probably just check it out. That being said, it's not a film with a ton of levity. I actually didn't mind the pacing. It's definitely shorter than any of the Lord of the Rings movies. It's a 2-hour, 14-minute film, but it doesn't feel short. They definitely have a lot of ground to cover. There's definitely there are major significant parts, that this story is covering. So you will definitely feel like stuff's going on. Now, that being said, there's not a ton of fantasy element in this film whatsoever. It's a Lord of the Rings movie, and they pretty much are focused almost 100% on just human, a human infighting, like a war between rival human clans. Which, I mean, looking at it, yeah, it's pretty standard, I guess. So, that being said, yeah, if you were hoping to see some more fantastical elements, they're very minor. They're very, very minor. But that being said, how is the action? It's pretty good most of the time. There's actually, I would say most of it's pretty good. Trying to think of where I'd like to jump into next. I mean, again, I like the music. I actually like the new stuff that was brought to the film. I really like that they didn't take away the old music. Like, they use motifs from the classic film, and it's great. It definitely feels a little more something less fantastical, even though it is a Lord of the Rings film. But they're not really focused on anything. This is, and the nice thing about this is, I think this fills a gap in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I think is really nice. Which is, it did always feel like Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas, when they're chasing the orcs to save Merry and Pippin in the Two Towers, it's kind of like, okay, they get to the end of their chase, and then it's like, okay, we're in Rohan now. And now there's this whole random plot about this whole random country that is pretty much not even mentioned in the original film. And you kind of have to really quickly dive into this whole thing with Grima and with King Theoden and in Eowyn and Eomer and the House of Rohan and all. There's all this stuff that's just not part of the original Fellowship of the Ring at all. And then it's just like a major part of Two Towers, and then even by extension going into the Return of the King. So this actually, I think, helps fill a gap. Like, it helps contextualize and flesh out Middle Earth a little more. Makes it more understandable and better what's going on with the human side. Because if anything, Lord of the Rings movies, they're really focused on Gondor and how Aragorn is the lost king of Gondor, and Gondor this, Gondor that. Where was Gondor when the Westfall fell? All that stuff. But even though you're witnessing the story of Gondor through Rohan in the Lord of the Rings movies, this movie helps kind of contextualize and give you a sort of filled in backstory to what is Rohan, what was this place, what was this all about. So that's kind of like the nice thing about it. Now, as far as the actual individual characters and storyline, this is where it's a little bit odd. I'd say a little odd, because they decided to make the main character story is Hera, who was the daughter of Helm, who didn't get a name in the appendix, but They gave her a name in the movie, obviously. And from the promotional material and the marketing and the image you're seeing right here, you would think she's basically a Soul Calibur character. And the thing is, by the end of the movie, sure, but it's surprising how she's more or less just she's an observer, or just like she just stumbles into these situations more than she's actually doing much in the movies. Like, it's still it's funny how much the film really is mostly about Helm and the character Wolf. It's really kind of about those two, and how Hera is just sort of caught in between this stuff, and she does stuff, sure, but she doesn't actually get into an honest-to-God fight until the end of the movie, which was a little shocking to me, like, a little bit, because there was times where, like, it was set up where you think, oh, okay, well, she's going to get in a fight, she's going to do something here, and it's, oh, no, I guess she's not. So that was, like, a little surprising. The film is also, I mean, I guess fair warning, this film is brutal to animals. Like, this film was made as if the director had a personal hatred towards elephants, and wanted to take it out on them in animated form. I mean, thank God it's animated, but if you're not really cool with seeing animals get fucked up in a movie, elephants and horses get demolished in this film. So yeah, there's just fair warning on that. That being said, some of the fights are pretty cool. I mean, and if the thing is, if you're, say you're a Tolkien fan and you're like a big fan of Helm and the legend of Helm Hammerhead, you're gonna love this film. You're gonna love it, because there's never been there. I don't think I've seen a cooler old man. And frankly, there was a really cool character who's a shield maiden of Rohan, also in the film. But like, you've never seen a more badass old man in an anime. Like, I haven't. Like, unless it was like for some like almost like Joker or something. But I cannot, like, you know, if you like Helm Hammerhead, you can't believe the justice they do to this character, because good lord. Good lord. This man's the cool factor stuff this guy gets to do. It's almost like, I don't even know, you almost wonder why Hera even was the main character sometimes, when it's like, okay, well, they give all the badass moments to Helm Hammerhead. So a little bit of that going on, however you feel about it. And yeah, the villain is, at first they try to like maybe bring him out as a sort of somewhat sympathetic, you know, he had a tough life or whatever, or, you know, oh, he kind of got a rough deal. But then it's like, he can't let go of it. Like, he's just like, he is just consumed by his hatred to such a petty degree that he goes from like, oh, maybe he's he's unlikable. No, he's a piece of shit. So he's just like, they never really give this character any chance of sort of redemption or sympathy. It's just kind of like, it's just immediately presented like, oh, maybe there's something to it. No, he's just an a-hole. But yeah, that being, like, you know, as far as like the characters and stuff goes, it is kind of Tolkien-esque in the sense of that Hera tends, I think unintentionally, I don't think this was the intention of the filmmakers at all, but I think unintentionally becomes more of a Frodo and Bilbo, where Bilbo, he's watching crap happen during The Hobbit. He just kind of stumbles into things. You know, Thorin Oakenshield and Bard the Bowman do all the heavy lifting when it comes to fighting and action, and Bilbo's just kind of like, oh my god, he's just running for his life, fighting for his life. Frodo's kind of the same way, where, I mean, that's what I like about Frodo, but it's intentional with Frodo. Hera here is a little bit like, she's important to the story, and she's obviously, the movie's technically centered around her, and she does important things, obviously, but she seems to be more of just, I'm just sort of a victim of circumstance most of the time, more than I'm actually doing anything. You know, and there are some characters that seem to disappear from the film and are like wildly important to the actual plot, where like when they come back, oh, super important, you know. There's some of that where it's like, okay, that's there's a they try to initially they try to juggle a lot of characters, and they sort of just kind of like drop out of the picture because of that. I will say this: there's a second in command, a General Trag, for the main villain Wolf, and he's fantastic because he's one of those villains assisted, like he's the main general for the main villain, and he's always trying to tell the main villain to do the smart thing. Not even the right thing, just the smart thing. He's the smart one. And it makes him very competent. Like, they have a very competent second in command, but like their leader's just so consumed with his hatred that like he can't even do the smart thing. But yeah, so that being said, I actually like that. I really liked Helm. I liked the Shield Maiden. I liked the general for the bad guys, because they were really smart. It was just kind of funny because like the main villain and the main antagonist are kind of, they're not weak. They're just kind of like, I wish the main character did a little more honest to God fighting, and I wish the villain had a little more going on for him other than just like being, because it's kind of like watching like the third Hobbit movie when like Thor and Oakenshield is just completely consumed with dragons, with gold fever, or, you know, dragon's curse, and he's just mad, and he's just descending into more and more mad, and that's a very Tolkien thing to do. But like there were hints early on in the film that maybe there was like some more complexity going on here with the main bad guy, but there kind of isn't. It's just watching a man who starts the movie going over the edge of sanity, and the rest of the movie is just him falling down the cliff. So I think it would have been nice to have seen even more. It would have been nice to see more of Hera's brothers. It would have been nice to see more of Hera's cousin. Fun little antidote. This will probably be the last credited movie that Christopher Lee's ever in. They just use some lines from cut dialogue from Lord of the Rings for Saruman, and it's like one line, but it's kind of, I just was sort of like, it's kind of nice. I think Christopher Lee would have wanted this. Film is dedicated to Bernard Hill, who played King Theoden, who passed away sadly this year, which was nice to see. But yeah, you go, if nothing else, go see the movie for the last movie Christopher Lee will ever be in. And he would have wanted it that way. He would have wanted to go out playing in Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings would be one of his last films. So yeah, like, again, this isn't, the weird thing is you might think because it's an animated film, why didn't they do something like Silmarillion with armies of Balrogs and all this other crazy stuff? But it's actually a very condensed story, and it's focused almost exclusively on humans, and no magic is in the film really whatsoever. There's some stuff that almost borderlines supernatural, but Sir Christopher Lee, you're correct. Thank you, Beef Boy. So, that being said, I actually recommend it. I had a good time with it. I actually enjoyed it. But the thing is, I'm a fan of this franchise, of this world, of this mythology. And if you're a fan of this mythology, if you really like the mythology of Lord of the Rings, you're going to like this movie. If you're a fan of the world building of Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings is super famous for its world building, and this is a good film for more world building. If you're in it for the fights, there's some pretty decent fights. I still think you should go. If you're an animation fan, I think you should go see it just because this film is doomed at the box office. But it's like, man, I really wish we could live in a world where more things like this were made. Although this film, greedily enough, this film only exists the way it does because they needed to fast track something to keep the film rights. This was done entirely for greed purposes to get the film made, which is, kind of a weird thing, but either way, I would love it if there were more movies like this every year coming out in theaters. I had a good time, and I think if you're into the mythology and the world of it, you're gonna have a good time. If you if you like big, strong old men, oh boy, you're gonna like this movie a whole lot. But I think if you're a casual person, if you're not really too much, if you would like say, hey, I enjoy Lord of the Rings, but I don't, I'm not like a fan. I don't really like remember any names or anything. I don't know if this will do much for you. This is very much for people. If you ever sat there and wondered, watching Two Towers or Return of the King, going like, I kind of wonder. I wish I knew a little bit more about Rohan. About the horse riders. If you ever wanted to know more about the horse riders and where did Carl Urban come from? What's Carl Urban's family backstory like? That's what this is. So yeah, this is made by Warner Brothers. This is made by Warner Brothers, and I forget what anime studio. This is Middle Earth. This Middle Earth Films. It is Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings. It is in the Peter Jackson universe. If we want to go for it, go call it anything like that. But absolutely think it's a good time. I think if you like anime, again, if you like anime, you like world building, you like Lord of the Rings, it's an odd mix. I would never have thought anime and Lord of the Rings would ever be a big mix, but they make it work here, no problem. So I enjoyed it. I generally enjoyed it. I am a big fan of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's work. And even though this is based on a blurb of Tolkien's writing that is all creative liberty after that, I think they did a good job, and I think they really wrote a very Tolkien-like story that I think Tolkien would be okay with. I think he'd probably, there'd be things Tolkien's would have done differently, probably would have done better, sure. Sola Digital Arts, thank you. God, I forgot. It was something like that. But yeah, this is definitely a very Tolkien-esque story, because Tolkien was always big on sort of corruption, greed, and being driven to madness, over very humanistic things. But yeah, like this. But yeah, this was a good time. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my afternoon. Watching Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. I wish there would be more. I know, but again, because this film was kind of made under weird circumstances for mostly greedy reasons, probably not going to get anything like this again. I hear they're doing 2 new films, one of them being The Hunt for Golem. God, why? If anything, I like the fact that this film is mostly disconnected, even though it's called Lord of the Rings, it is mostly disconnected from the overall Lord of the Rings story, because the idea that I'm hearing that they want to do a young Aragorn hunts for Golem film to me is silly, because they're gonna be like, oh, we'll get a young Aragorn, and I'm like, Aragorn's 88. He's looked the way he has for a very long time. He's a Dunedain, but they forgot that. So, and you can't just rehire Viggo Mortensen. The man's like 60 years old or 70 years old at this point. So. That being said, go see War of the Rohirrim. I had a good time. I think we need to get more anime films, more animated epics in American theaters. Again, it's a portal into a universe that didn't happen. So go see it, go enjoy it. If you're a casual fan, maybe not. So maybe it's not for you. But again, you like Lord of the Rings, you like anime, probably have a good time. Not the greatest film. I don't even know what I'd give it. I'd give it like an 8. Maybe a 7 or an 8. Seems about what I would do for this film. And it's probably not like super rewatchable like Lord of the Rings, because it doesn't have a very simple, fun, easy to follow hero's journey storyline. It's about backstabbing a-holes the whole way through. But that being said, I had a good time. I hope you do too. So